Welcome to Use Left-Right System to record transactions. By the end of this applet, you should be able to use the left-right system to keep the accounting equation in balance when recording transactions. From the previous applet, you'll remember that accountants use the left-right system as an efficient mechanical way to ensure that the accounting equation stays in balance as transactions are recorded. And you should recall that if we want to show an increase in an asset, dividend, or expense account, we'll use the left side of the account page. If we want to show an increase to a liability, contributed capital, or revenue account, we'll use the right side of the account page. Here's how the system works. We'll use Grow Green Ink again, and the same transactions that we used in a previous applet. The first transaction occurred when Grow Green received cash from owners and issued shares of Grow Green stock. We have to spread the ledger pages out so that you can see them, but remember that in order to fit the accounting equation on the desktop, we put the pages in a binder called the ledger. The analysis begins the same way it did before. You have to identify the accounts that are affected when Grow Green receives cash from owners and issues shares of stock. The accounts affected are cash and common stock. Before we can record the transaction, we have to figure out which side of each account page we need to use. So for each account affected, we have to ask and answer 3 questions. Let's start with cash. What type of account is cash? Is it an asset, liability, contributed capital, dividends, revenue, or expense? Cash is an asset, something the business owns. The second question is, what is the increase side for this account type for assets? Left. Assets increase on the left. The third question is, did this transaction cause Grow Green's cash to increase or decrease? Grow Green's cash increased. So we'll record the $30,000 on the increase side or the left side of the cash account. Then we have to ask and answer the same 3 questions for the common stock account. What type of account is common stock? Is it an asset, liability, contributed capital, dividends, revenue, or expense? Common stock is a contributed capital account. We use it when owners put assets into the business. The second question is, what is the increase side for this account type for contributed capital accounts? The right. Contributed capital accounts increase on the right. The third question is, did this transaction cause Grow Green's common stock account to increase or decrease? Since Grow Green issued shares of its stock, the common stock account increased. So we will record the $30,000 on the increase side or the right side of the common stock account. The beauty of the left-right system is that as long as you record an amount on the left side of any page and the same amount on the right side of any page, the accounting equation will stay in balance. Before we record the next transaction, you might find it useful to have a list of the steps that we just used to analyze the transaction. You might want to click on the pause button and either do a screenshot that you can print or write down the steps so that you can refer to them as we proceed. Let's use these steps to analyze and record the second transaction in which Grow Green bought equipment and paid cash. What accounts are affected? Cash and equipment. For cash then, what type of account is it? Asset. What is the increase side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause cash to increase or decrease? Decrease, since Grow Green paid cash. Since cash decreased, we will record the $2,000 on the opposite of the increase side, so on the right side of the cash account. Now for equipment. What type of account is it? Asset. What is the increase side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause equipment to increase or decrease? Equipment increased when Grow Green bought equipment. Since equipment increased, we will record the $2,000 on the increase side, the left side of the equipment account. We have $2,000 on the left of the equipment page and $2,000 on the right of the cash page. The equation is in balance. Next, Grow Green buys a truck by signing a note. What accounts are affected? Truck and note payable. For the truck account, what type of account is it? Asset. What is the increase side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause the truck account to increase or decrease? Increase, since Grow Green now has a truck that it didn't have a minute ago. Since truck increased, we'll record the $40,000 on the increase side, the left side of the truck account. Now for note payable. What type of account is it? Liability. What is the increase side for a liability? Right. Did the transaction cause note payable to increase or decrease? Note payable increased when Grow Green signed the note promising to pay. Since the note payable increased, we'll record the $40,000 on the increase side, that is, the right side of the note payable account. We have $40,000 on the left side of the truck page and $40,000 on the right side of the note payable page. The equation is in balance. In this transaction, Grow Green received cash from customers for services provided. What accounts are affected? Cash and service revenue. For cash, what type of account is it? Asset. What's the increase side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause the cash account to increase or decrease? Increase, since Grow Green received cash. Since cash increased, we'll record the $7,000 on the increase side, the left side of the cash account. Now for service revenue, what type of account is it? Revenue. What's the increase side for a revenue? Right. Did the transaction cause service revenue to increase or decrease? Service revenue increased when Grow Green earned by providing services. You'll find that just like expenses and dividends, which generally always increase, the same is true of revenues. Since service revenue increased, we'll record the $7,000 on the right side of the service revenue page. We have $7,000 on the left of the cash page and $7,000 on the right side of the service revenue page. The equation is in balance. Next, Grow Green provides services for a customer on account. What accounts are affected? Service revenue and accounts receivable. For service revenue, what type of account is it? Revenue. What is the increase side for a revenue? The right. Did the transaction cause service revenue to increase or decrease? Increase, since Grow Green earned. Since service revenue increased, we'll record the $3,000 on the increase side, the right side of the service revenue account. Now for accounts receivable. What type of account is it? Asset. What's the increase side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause accounts receivable to increase or decrease? Accounts receivable increased because Grow Green now has the right to receive $3,000 from its customer. Since accounts receivable increased, we'll record the $3,000 on the increase side, the left side of the accounts receivable page. We have $3,000 on the left of the accounts receivable page, $3,000 on the right of the service revenue page. The equation is in balance. Now Grow Green pays salaries. What accounts are affected? Cash and salary expense. For cash, what type of account is it? Asset. What's the increase side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause cash to increase or decrease? Decrease, since Grow Green paid cash. Since cash decreased, we'll record the $1,000 on the opposite of the increase side, that is, the right side of the cash account. Now for salary expense, what type of account is it? Expense. What's the increase side for an expense? Left. Did the transaction cause salary expense to increase or decrease? Which way do expenses almost always go? Up. Since salary expense increased, we'll record the $1,000 on the increase side, that is the left side of the salary expense page. We have 1,000 on the left of the salary expense page, 1,000 on the right of the cash page. The equation is in balance. Next, Grow Green pays down its note. What accounts are affected? Note payable and cash. For note payable, what type of account is it? A liability. What's the increased side for a liability? The right. Did the transaction cause the note to increase or decrease? Decrease, since Grow Green is paying down the note. Since note payable decreased, we will record the $4,000 on the opposite of the increased side. So we'll put on the left side of the note payable page. Now for cash, what type of account is cash? Asset. What's the increased side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause cash to increase or decrease? Decrease, since Grow Green paid cash. Since cash decreased, we'll record the $4,000 on the opposite of the increased side, that is on the right side of the cash page. We have $4,000 on the left of the note payable page and $4,000 on the right of the cash page. The equation is in balance. Now Grow Green receives cash from customer on account. Remember, this means that previously a customer accepted services from us but didn't pay for them, so we had a right to receive. Now we are receiving. What accounts are affected? Cash and accounts receivable. For cash, what type of account is it? Asset. What's the increased side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause cash to increase or decrease? Increase, since Grow Green received cash. Since cash increased, we'll record the $3,000 on the increased side, that is the left side of the cash page. Now for accounts receivable. What type of account is accounts receivable? Asset. What's the increased side for an asset? Left. Did the transaction cause accounts receivable to increase or decrease? Decrease, since Grow Green's right to receive decreases when Grow Green receives the actual cash. Since accounts receivable decreased, we'll record the $3,000 on the opposite of the increased side, so on the right side of the accounts receivable page. We have $3,000 on the left of the cash page, $3,000 on the right of the accounts receivable page. The equation is in balance. Grow Green buys a week's worth of gasoline on account. What accounts are affected? Gasoline expense and accounts payable. For gasoline expense, what type of account is it? Expense. What's the increased side for an expense? The left. Did the transaction cause gasoline expense to increase or decrease? Increase, as expenses generally do. Since the gasoline expense increased, we'll record the $500 on the increased side, the left side of the gasoline expense page. Now for accounts payable. What type of account is it? Liability. What's the increased side for a liability? The right. Did the transaction cause accounts payable to increase or decrease? Increase, since Grow Green charged the $500. Since accounts payable increased, we'll record the $500 on the increased side, the right side of the accounts payable page. We have $500 on the left of the gasoline expense page and $500 on the right of the accounts payable page. The equation is in balance. Finally, Grow Green declares and pays a dividend to its stockholders. What accounts are affected? Cash and dividends. For cash, what type of account is it? Asset. What's the increased side for an asset? The left. Did the transaction cause cash to increase or decrease? Decrease, since Grow Green paid cash. Since cash decreased, we'll record the $1,500 on the opposite of the increased side, that is the right side of the cash page. Now for dividends, what type of account is it? Dividends. What's the increased side for a dividends account? Left. Did the transaction cause dividends to increase or decrease? Increase. Remember that dividend accounts behave very much like expense accounts do, so generally increase. Since dividends increased, we'll record the $1,500 on the increased side, that is the left side of the dividends account. We have $1,500 on the left of the dividends account page and $1,500 on the right of the cash page. the equation is in balance. We've recorded all of the transactions for GrowGreen for the month of April. The next thing we need to do is calculate the balance of each account. For example, right now, we know all the things that happen to cash during the month, but we don't know how much cash we have. To show that we'll be doing some math, we draw a line across each account. This separates the transaction amounts from the balance. Then, to calculate the balance for any account, we have to do 4 things. 1, we'll add the amounts on the left side. 2, we'll add the amounts on the right side. 3, we'll take the difference between the total lefts and total rights. And 4, we'll write the difference down on whichever side was larger. Take our cash account, for example. The amounts on the left add up to $40,000. The amounts on the right add up to $8,500. The difference is $31,500. Since the total lefts were higher than the total rights, we'll put the $31,500 balance on the left side of the cash page. In this example, we actually recorded the total lefts and the total rights as well as the final balance. However, accountants usually do not write in the total lefts and rights, but just the account balance. We'll go ahead and calculate the rest of the account balances. We used the left-right system to make sure that we kept the accounting equation in balance every time we recorded a transaction. But being human, we could have made dumb errors like transposing 2 digits of a number as we wrote it in on one side of the entry, or getting interrupted and forgetting to even write the amount down on the second account page that was affected. So now we need to prove that the equation is in fact in balance. To do this, we'll flip through the ledger page by page, and on a piece of paper we'll write down the account name and the balance from each ledger page. As we do this, it's very important that we pay attention to whether the balance is on the left or right side of the page, and that we position it properly on our piece of paper. The first page in our ledger is cash. So we write cash down, and the account balance is a left $31,500, so we write this amount in the left column on our piece of paper. The second page in our ledger is accounts receivable, and it has a 0 balance. Notice that the 0 is positioned on the increase or normal side of the account. This is traditional. When we encounter an account with a 0 balance, we have a choice. We can list it just as we do the other accounts, or we can leave it off our list because the balance is 0. We're going to include the account on our list. The next page is equipment, and it has a left balance of $2,000, so we write them down, and so on. When we have finished listing the account names and their balances, you can probably guess what comes next. We need to add the lefts and add the rights, and as long as the total lefts equal the total rights, the accounting equation is in balance. The last thing we need to do to our proof that the accounting equation is in balance is to add a proper accounting heading. Accounting reports will always have a 3-line heading. The first line is always the company name, in our case, GrowGreen Inc. The second line is for the report title, and since proof that the accounting equation is in balance is too long and cumbersome, The official name for our proof is trial balance. The third line is always for the date. Since this list shows the account balances for the end of April, we'll use the date April 30th, 2013. This concludes the ACLET. Use the left-right system to record transactions.